Hello everyone, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I have decided to do a tier ranking video today. I always thought tier ranking looked so fun and I've wanted to do it for so long now. I want to tier rank every book I read in 2024. I do know that it's not 2024 and it is not anywhere near 2024, but I did think it would be very fun to tier rank this because it will also give you a look into what I read before I started my YouTube channel. So let's get into it. So let me show you the tiers that I made first. Starting on the bottom, we've got Ugh. I think this encompasses the feel of that was just not good. And then above that we have I don't regret reading it, meaning that I don't regret it, but also can't really say anything more positive than that I don't regret reading it. Then we have enjoyable but forgettable. I think there are going to be quite a few books in this category, especially since it has been a while for most of these books that I read them, which I don't know, maybe makes it even more interesting to tier rank them because it eliminates recency bias. I think there will be a bunch of books that I liked at the time. I enjoyed them at the time, definitely had a good time reading them, but I couldn't tell you the plot right now, meaning that it was forgettable and just not very unique or in any way making an impact on me. Above that we have definitely recommend. So these are books that may be around like a 3.5 star, a 4 star, and I would definitely recommend them. Then above that we have 5 stars, so this is also quite straightforward. I think these are just 5-star books. I loved these books. I would recommend these books to anyone. So then above that we have a 6th star needs to be invented. These are my absolute favorite books of the year. And I want to say I'm gonna not put that many books in this tier, but also I know that I have a really, really good reading year last year and I read a bunch of all-time favorites. So who knows, maybe there will actually be quite a few books in this category, but we're gonna go rank them and see. I put the books in order of when I read them. So starting here with the memoir of Matthew Perry, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. That is the first book I finished in 2024, and then it goes in chronological order. Okay, let's start with the first one. We've got Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. I find this a difficult start because I don't actually put ratings on memoirs. It feels a bit off to me to rate someone's life story. Like I can obviously judge the writing style and it can be an enjoyable read or not so enjoyable read, but I do base my ratings for books in general mainly on how entertained I was. And it feels a bit weird to say I was not entertained or I was very entertained with someone's life story. I also find it very difficult to compare a fiction book with a non-fiction book, and rating wise, can't really say that if I were to rate a book 4 stars in a non-fiction and then a book 4 stars in a fiction book, that they are comparable in a way. I feel like it's just a very different type of story. But I do kind of need to rate it now because I have to put it in a tier. I would definitely recommend it, so it's there, but it could actually be a 5-star read maybe. I do remember I read it in like 3 days, which is very fast for me, and I couldn't put it down. So I think I'm gonna drop it here. Then we have History Is All You Left Me, which, starting strong, I'm gonna put it in a 6-star needs to be invented. This is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It is such a moving story. It is such a nuanced story. I feel like It is a YA, but I would definitely say, even if you're not that into YA, you can read this book because it didn't feel YA to me. And it is, it's not a romance, but it has romantic parts in it. It is just such a beautiful story about grief, and the romance that was in it, I felt like it was very nuanced, which I don't know if that's the right word and I can fully explain what I mean with that, but I feel like often romance books have a romance story that is very straightforward. It is male main character, female main character, they like each other probably often off the bat, or at least they're attracted to each other off the bat, and then they want to be together, but something is keeping them apart, almost always their own issues, and then eventually they get together, maybe a third act conflict, and then happily ever after. And I think that I do enjoy those books and I read them quite often. They're easy to read, they're easy to get through, but I often kind of miss the nuanced human emotions in those books. They're very tropey. Often let's say the male main character, but sometimes it's the female main character, he's super in love, but he feels like he can't be with her because he doesn't want a relationship. I feel like that's almost always what the book is about, and it's very black and white. And I think with this book, and I've read a couple more like that, but this is one of my favorites of that type, it was a lot more complicated emotions, and humans are very complicated creatures, and they're a lot more complicated than a lot of romance books make them seem, and this book made them seem as complicated as they really are. So anyway, History Is All You Left Me goes up on top. Then we have Rivals, which is the third part in the American Royal series by Katharine McGee. Katharine McGee is one of my all-time favorite authors, if not my very favorite author of all time. I've read every book she's put out so far, and I've loved them all, but of all her books, this one and the novella Inheritance, which I'll get to in a sec, is my least favorite. It was good, and I think the series is a 5-star series for me, but this book was the most boring, seems way too harsh for what it was. Was still enjoyable. I would still definitely recommend it, and obviously it's a part in the series, so it's not like you can skip it. But it was the least eventful in this series. Then we've got Rain, which was the last part, the fourth book, the final book in the American Royal series. I loved it. I think this might be my favorite in the series, and I'll put it at 5 stars. Inheritance was enjoyable but forgettable. It was a novella, it was part of the American Royal series, and it took place before the events of the first book, so it's a prequel in a way. You don't have to read this. It provided no new information at all. It was enjoyable. I'm not going to put it any lower than that because it definitely was enjoyable. I just wouldn't definitely recommend it. I just personally liked reading it because I loved all the characters in that series and I loved the world so much, so I did not mind spending another few pages in that world. Moving on to My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Okay, so it's not a 5-star. I think I might have given it 4. I'm in between these two because it was enjoyable. I don't remember much of it, but also forgettable seems a bit harsh. It was a good read. It was definitely also not very plot driven. I feel like it was more so character driven, so I think that makes it seem more forgettable than it is in a way, because if a book is very plot heavy, it's easier, I think, to remember, okay, this happened and then this happened and then this happened. With this book, I don't believe I remember at all what happened. That's not true. I remember a couple things, but because it wasn't very plot driven, I think there also isn't much to remember in a way. I'm gonna definitely recommend. But yeah, no, okay, I'll keep it there. We have Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This is a bit odd in the middle here randomly because I have no other Harry Potter books in this list at all. As a kid, I stopped at book number 3, so I wanted to continue with book number 4 because I didn't feel like reading them all again. Because I feel like I remember the stories by heart. I've seen the movie so many times that I don't believe it was necessary to reread book 1 to 3. And I ended up reading The Goblet of Fire, which I DNF'd when I was about maybe 13, 14. At the time, I just couldn't get through the prologue, because the prologue is the part, if you know the series, where this old man is in this house and he overhears a conversation between Voldemort and some other person that I don't remember who it was exactly. And it's just it's quite a long prologue, if I remember correctly. And in the beginning, you don't understand why it is necessary per se. When you read the whole book, it makes sense. So that's what I did now. I did read the whole book this time and I enjoyed it a lot. I would say it's a definitely recommend. But then I ended up DNFing the 5th book. I don't know really why. It was enjoyable. I just couldn't get through it. But I did soft DNF it. I want to read it again at some point. Evidence of the Affair. There were 2 reasons I picked this up. One, it's by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I will read anything she writes because she is one of my all-time favorite authors. And 2, this was a very short book. And this was when I was starting to get into reading challenges and logging my reads, and I just wanted to read as much as possible, which sounds weird. It's not like I just want to read anything that has less than 100 pages, no matter if I like it or not. It's not like that, but I did feel like it was fun to challenge myself, set a reading goal, etc. And since it was a short book by one of my favorite authors, I thought, let's read it. But then I just didn't connect to the characters. I think it might be my issue that I'm not into short stories that much, because I don't get enough time to care about the characters. And I think some people love short stories, but it's not for me. Then we have The Secret History. Yeah, do I regret reading it? That's the question. I would say I regret reading it, actually. I loved the first 150, 200-ish pages, and then the rest was just, I think I've read a lot of reviews online and everyone says that's the point, which I'm sure it is, but I didn't like it. It was dragging in my opinion, and that might be the point, but that still doesn't mean I have to like it. Fourth Wing, 5 stars. I'm actually debating putting it in here. A 6-star needs to be invented, because as I've read more fantasy, I've realized that Fourth Wing is my favorite by a long shot. So I'm gonna actually give it the credit it deserves and put it in a 6-star needs to be invented. One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love this book. I do think it's the only book by Taylor Jenkins Reid that I did not give 5 stars. It just did not give me that 5-star feeling that I can't explain. When a book is 5 stars, really is a feeling, like everyone on this platform always says. So I'm sure I don't need to explain that. It will go in definitely recommend, because it is just very good. It is the best way a love triangle story could have ever been written, in my opinion, where you really truly do not know who she's going to choose, who you want her to choose. There are pros and cons on both sides. She is put in the situation by an accidental twist of fate, where her husband that she believed was dead actually turns out not to be dead. So her husband returns, but she already has a fiance, making it so that she's put in a love triangle situation that was not really her own doing, I would say. So best love triangle trope per thingy I have ever seen. Moving on. If He Had Been With Me. I don't know. Okay, so it's definitely not forgettable, so I can't put it there. I don't regret reading it, that's true. It is not a 5-star book. I don't know if I would recommend it. Definitely not up there. So either I can put it in I don't regret reading it. I think I'll have to put it in there. I loved the ending. It made me feel so much, but that doesn't make the rest of the book any better. I don't think I would recommend this book to anyone. It is not a bad book. I think I'm just used to reading YA novels where the main character is quite mature for their age, I think. And this book, I will say to the author, which I'm pretty sure is it Laura Nowlin? Yeah, Laura Nolan or Nowlin. I don't know how to pronounce it. I will give her a compliment where it is due that she wrote a teenager very, very accurately. But I'm not a teenager anymore, and I don't want to be reading about an accurately written teenager anymore because it was very cringy. Like, I was at that age, and that was written so well, but it's not for me, at least not at this stage in my life. It did make me cry and made me very emotional, and that is why I will. This book is unreadable. So then we have the sequel, which is If Only I Had Told Her. I love this. Okay, this one is complicated once again because this book consists of 3 different POVs, and they don't go like, they don't intertwine like they do in most books where it's like you read from character A, then B, then C, then back to A, then back to C, then back to B. It's not like that. It's one POV, and then second POV, and then third POV. So it's a bit like 3 different novellas in one book, but it's not advertised that way, so it is really one book that I'm forced to give 1 rating. But the 3 different stories in the book have very different ratings in my opinion, because the first story, and I won't, because it is a sequel, I won't go into any details about who the POVs are from, but the first POV, absolutely loved it. I would give that 5 stars. The second POV was nice, was good, maybe 3.5, 3.75, and then the last POV felt totally unnecessary. It was just not that good, not what I was looking for. So I will put this in enjoyable but forgettable. I think that's the right place for it. Check and Mate. I absolutely loved Check and Mate. I would consider putting it in a 6-star needs to be invented, but I do feel like maybe I need to keep that a bit, like, I don't want to just, I feel like the books that are in that tier, I need to be a bit, how do I say that? I can't just put every book I loved in that tier. This can't be overflowing. So I'll put it in 5 stars, but it's a good 5 stars, if that makes any sense. The Girl He Used to Know, which is also a chess romance. I read it directly after Check and Mate because Check and Mate I loved so much, and I loved the chess part of it specifically a lot. So I immediately searched on Google, I'm pretty sure, just any book about chess, because I wanted to read another book about chess immediately. So that's how I got to The Girl He Used to Know, which is a very good book that I would definitely recommend. It was just not 5 stars, but it was very close. At the time, I didn't really do half ratings or 0.75 ratings, but I think if I had been doing that then, I would probably have given it a 4.75. It's about a girl with autism, which I think that part of it was written well and realistically, as far as I can tell. And it took a twist that I did not see coming, so I won't say anything more about it, except that was very, very good and made me love the book even more. Then we go to It Ends With Us with Colleen Hoover, which I feel like there are so many opinions about this on the internet, and they range from all the way here to all the way here, that it makes me just absolutely scared to say anything about this online. But I liked it. I do understand why some people don't like it. I think it had some scenes that I thought were cringy. Like, for example, the whole, what was it, naked truth thing. But I have to say, in defense of It Ends With Us, that anyone who says this book is toxic well, you're not technically wrong, but anyone who says this book romanticizes abuse, I don't understand that critique point at all. And everyone is entitled to their opinion, of course, but I very much disagree with that, I have to say, because that is kind of what I was maybe afraid I was going to read, that it was going to romanticize abuse, because I had heard a bunch of people say that it did that. I kind of get where the critique point is coming from. I feel like what is really wrong with this book is that it is shelved in the romance section of most bookstores, when that is not what this book is. I think this book needs to be advertised as a literary fiction book. I am not critiquing Colleen Hoover here because I'm actually not sure at all how she advertises her book, and I know she says that she writes outside of genres, that she kind of likes to write a story that she wants to tell, not thinking about what genre it is. So I'm assuming that goes for this as well. I don't know. But I do know that in my local bookstores, this book is always shelved as a romance book, and that is just, I think, where all the problems start, because it is not a romance book. And if you say that it is a romance book, then yeah, sure, it is very, very toxic. But I would say that it is a book about a woman dealing with abuse in her relationship, and it is showing a very well written, I would say, a very nuanced image of what it is actually like to be in a relationship with someone that abuses you, because it is in real life also not that black and white. At least I don't think it is, where it's like someone hurts you one time, you immediately decide to leave, you immediately think this is the worst person, I should never have been with them. Obviously, maybe some people on the outside looking in will think that and will say, why don't you just leave? But I think that's what this book is about, and I think that's why it's such a good book, that it shows all the reasons also why people don't always leave. And I won't go into details because I don't want to spoil anything, but I think this book is actually about a strong woman dealing with a very difficult situation, and how her reasons for acting the way she does are written very well. It ties in with her past. There is a romance subplot in there, but that's not the toxic one. Yeah. So I have a very strong opinion about this book, not because it is my favorite book. It is not at all my favorite book. I think I gave it 4 stars, which is a good rating, but it's also not up there. But I do have a very strong opinion about the critique that it gets, because I think the critique that it often gets online is very unfair. So It Starts With Us, I would say, was enjoyable, but definitely forgettable as well. It was a romance, in contrast to It Ends With Us. I would say this is a romance, and it was enjoyable, but forgettable. I would say It Starts With Us reads like a very, very long epilogue of It Starts With Us, and it adds a different sort of subplot that is not really a factor in the first book at all. So if you do love the characters in It Ends With Us, then I would recommend going into this, but I would definitely not recommend going into It Starts With Us expecting something like It Ends With Us, because it's a different book entirely. It's a different genre entirely, I would say. Then I read Normal People. I would definitely recommend Normal People. I don't remember that much of the plot, but I also feel like it's not really plot driven, it's very character driven. I would say that for Normal People, the same thing goes that I said for History's All You Left Me, that the characters are written very nuanced, not very black and white, not very tropey, but very real, and that is what I loved about this book. Don't Let Me Fall. Ugh. I don't even know if I have to get into this a lot. It was a romance. It was cringy. I don't remember much about this plot, actually, but I do remember that it said on the back that it was about something, but it wasn't. 1984 by George Orwell. So I feel like because it is 1984 by George Orwell, I cannot say anything bad about it. But did I love it? Not really. So I will say, obviously this is an important book and it's a classic for a reason and whatnot, but I rate my books based on how I enjoyed them and not on if they're objectively good books. So I'm sure objectively this is a great book, this is a masterpiece, whatever. But personally, I had a hard time getting through it. There was a romance subplot in here that I did not see coming, and that was so bad. I feel like George Orwell was almost mocking love, but I'm afraid that he wasn't, and that this was really meant as a love story subplot, but there was no chemistry between the characters. There was no reason really for any of them to be in love with the other. It was not shown in a way that made sense. I definitely don't regret reading this, and it was enjoyable. Like, that's the thing, I can't really put it here because it isn't forgettable. But I also, well, that's the thing. I would recommend it if this is something you're interested in. If you're interested in reading a dystopian classic, obviously this is such a important book, such a beloved book. If you're interested in reading this book, definitely go read it. It didn't disappoint in the sense that it wasn't what I expected it to be. But it is just not a book that I really enjoyed because it's just not the type of book that I usually love. So I'm gonna put it in here with the side note that it wasn't actually forgettable, but also it doesn't fit anywhere else, so I can't put it anywhere else. Okay, this is gonna be easy, and we're gonna go through this a bit quickly, which is not bad because I think I've been talking for ages and we're not halfway even. But I'm gonna put all of these in. Am I? I was gonna say I'm gonna put them all in a 6-star needs to be invented, but okay, so definitely Saving 6 and Redeeming 6 have to be in that tier. But I'm in doubt between Binding 13 and Keeping 13 because are they just regular 5-star? No, they're not. No, they're not. They all go up there. All of them go up there. Why can't I just drag it here and then have the page move? That would be so nice, but it is not the case. Lie With Me was a 5-star read, absolutely. It is just a gorgeous story. It's very short. It is maybe 100 and something pages, I think, and I would absolutely recommend. It is such a quick read, but it's such a nice read. So this book is based on a true story, and it is about the author himself and a love affair he had when he was in his late teens, I think, with a guy from his village. So at the time it was still very much taboo to have a male-male relationship, and that's why they couldn't be together. And it's a very heartwarming but also sad story about how they couldn't be together, and knowing that it's based off a true story makes it even more impactful. I absolutely loved it. Then we have Bad Romeo, which, so the title alone makes it sound like a guilty pleasure, and it was. But it was a good guilty pleasure. It was a 5-star book. The second part, Broken Juliets, that's a thing, like, obviously I would recommend reading this because it is a sequel, and the story at the end of Bad Romeo is not finished. So if I love that much, obviously you want to know how it ends. But I would say Broken Juliet was not as good as Bad Romeo was, but it was still good. I would still recommend reading it. The Orange by Wendy Cope. So this was one of the first poetry collections I ever read. I liked it, but I didn't love it. Would I recommend it? I guess it was a bit forgettable, so I'll put it in there. Taming 7. Well, obviously I don't regret reading it, but I did not like it that much. I hear everyone online say that this was their most anticipated book in the series. That was not the case for me. Everyone loves Gypsy and Claire, but mainly Gypsy, I feel like. And I feel like I'm really missing out because I don't. Like, I mean, no one could hate on Gypsy. I don't hate Gypsy, but I feel very neutral about Gypsy. Gypsy is fun. He's a good side character, but it was not like he was my favorite character or that I was most anticipating his story. So I wasn't as disappointed as I feel like a lot of other people were with this book, but I was disappointed in the sense that I definitely did not enjoy this book and I had to really push myself through it. But I persevered because the first 4 books were one of my favorite books of all time. So I would still say this is a 5-star series, but this book I didn't love. I thought Claire and Gypsy were really cringe as well with the whole cat's parent thing. I don't know. It was a bit strange, them constantly calling each other mom and dad, I think, because they had cats together. I don't know. It was weird. Moving on to Divine Rivals. Okay, this is very interesting because I remember at the time I did not absolutely love this. I would probably have said enjoyable but forgettable. But I am reading Ruthless Vows now, which is the sequel, and I'm loving it, which makes me feel inclined to put Divine Rivals higher than I would have when I first read it. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. My video, my rules. Definitely recommend. Night Shift by Annie Crown. This perfectly encapsulates enjoyable but forgettable. This is the book that I had in mind when I made the category enjoyable but forgettable. Because I forgot, but it was enjoyable. Ooh, Magnolia Parks. I love Magnolia Parks. I would say... Oof. Okay, so I'm in between 5 stars and a 6-star needs to be invented, but I'm going to keep a 6-star need to be invented for another book in the series. So I'm going to put Magnolia Parks in 5 stars. And then I'm going to put Daisy Hates in a 6-star needs to be invented. I just love Daisy. I love her character so much. I love her relationship with Christian. I love everything about her book. There are so many beautiful quotes in that book. Also, that goes for Magnolia Parks as well. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I did not see it. I did not see it. Everyone loves this. I did not see it. It was not bad, but I wouldn't even say I enjoyed myself that much. I did not regret it. Did not regret reading it. Magnolia Parks, is this into the... No, Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home. That was also 5 stars for me. Daisy Hates the Great Undoing was... I think I made a ranking for myself at the end of 2024, and I'm pretty sure this book came out as number 3 of the whole year. So Saving 6, Redeeming 6, and then Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. So this is absolutely going in a 6-star needs to be invented. This is one of my favorite books of all time. A Novel Love Story. Ugh. No, that might be a bit too harsh actually. I don't regret. Do I? No, I might actually. I didn't like it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the plot twist. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like anything about this book except some vibes, maybe. Magnolia Parks, Into the Dark. I would like to reread this book sometime because I think when I read this, I was not in a very good place to be reading this book. I was definitely in a reading slump. I was going through some things in my personal life that were very on the not back, very forefront of my mind the whole time. And I remember going through this book so slowly. And it is a very slow paced book, I think, if I remember correctly. But I also just wasn't in the mood to read it at the time. So I would absolutely still recommend it. It doesn't go any lower than this tier. But I don't think I rated it 5 stars because I just had a hard time getting through it. Because it was slow paced, it was character driven, but it was still good. I think I still rated it 4 stars. Then I read the memoir The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, which I would definitely recommend. There were a few things, I don't know, it wasn't my favorite memoir, but like I said before with the Matthew Perry memoir, I cannot rate her life. And I think it was very interesting to read the story from her point of view, because obviously a lot of complicated, bad things happened to her, and she writes about that in detail. So it was heavy, but I think that is what I meant before when I said that there were some things I didn't like. Like, it was very heavy. And it makes sense that it's heavy because her life story is heavy, but I feel like if you compare it to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, her life story is also very heavy, but the way she writes the book, and same actually goes for Matthew Perry, the way she writes the book makes it a bit more lightweight. Like, she makes those heavy topics lighter by adding in a sense of humor, and I think Britney Spears did that a lot less than the other two authors of their memoirs did, and that is why I enjoyed the book a bit less, because it didn't go back and forth between heavier topics and lighter topics. It was just a lot of heavy. So I enjoyed it less than other celebrity memoirs I've read. It was still a good read. It was still something I would recommend. Unpopular opinion incoming. I did not like Happy Place at all. Keep in mind, I was still in this reading slump / going through a rough time in my life, and this was, I think, maybe even worse than the Magnolia Parks book. Not a book I had to be reading at that moment. So when I read it and I didn't like it, and I knew at the time that everyone loved it, I thought I read it at the wrong time. But I have to say, I read Funny Story by Emily Henry later, and I also didn't like that one, so also maybe the author might just not be for me. I didn't regret reading it though, but I can't, yeah. We have arrived at the area of unpopular opinions. I did not like Caraval at all as well. I feel about Caraval. There were so many plot twists. They came out of nowhere. I realized that a plot twist sounds like a good thing, but in the case of Caraval, I feel like the plot twists were too many, came out of nowhere, were used as a device to make the reader constantly think, oh wow, everything changed. And it felt like I just didn't know where the story was going to go. For me to enjoy a book, I need to have a sort of idea of where I'm going. So obviously it's good if a book surprises you, especially if it's a thriller, let's say, but I don't want to be surprised every chapter. I want to also feel like I know the characters, feel like, okay, this character is in pursuit of this and they want to do this to accomplish it, and then see them go on that journey. So I just feel like there were too many plot twists. I feel like everything could change at any moment, and it did that often. My other critique point for Caraval is that, well, she was sort of on a scavenger hunt of sorts. She was trying to solve clues, and I don't remember the details, so I could be wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, the clues weren't all necessary to find the final thing she was looking for. So it is hard to critique this because I forgot so many things about this book, but I do remember at the time my critique point was that she didn't actually need all the clues she found during the scavenger hunt to find the final thing that she was looking for. I feel like I think it was with just the first clue, or with just following one thing that she saw, she could have also arrived there, and she could have literally avoided doing the whole scavenger hunt and gone straight to the end point, which I feel defeats the whole purpose of there being a scavenger hunt in a book. And I just generally felt like the clues didn't make that much sense, and they weren't very good clues, and I felt like I just expected so much more of this book. I expected there to be clues and puzzles that felt at the end of the book that you kind of look back at all the clues and puzzles and think, oh wow, it all makes sense now. And I just didn't have that feeling. So yeah, I will have to say it was a magical world, but that was really the only good thing I could say about the book. Then we go to Iron Flame, which I liked Fourth Wing a bit more than I liked Iron Flame, so I'll put Iron Flame in 5 stars because it's still, I just love that world so much, and when I look back and when I think back of this book, it fills me just with joy, and I just want to reread them all at some point because I love the world, I love the dragons, I love Violet, I love Xaden, I love everyone. Then I read My Sister's Keeper. I don't think I rated this 5 stars, but like I said before, back then I did not do like a 4.5 sort of thing. But if I would rate it now, I think I would probably give it a 4.5 or maybe a 4.25. So this will go in definitely recommend. It is a literary fiction novel. I absolutely loved this book. This has such an interesting premise. It is about a girl that is kind of used by her family to provide donor, like, okay, so I realized I do not have the English vocabulary to explain the plot of this book, because English, I think I'm good at English, but it's not my first language. And this book, the plot has a lot to do with like medical terms, and there's a lawsuit in there. I do not have the vocabulary to explain this plot. It's good. Trust me. It's good. Then I read Bunny, which was enjoyable, but it was forgettable. I didn't love it. I didn't dislike it. It was an interesting read. I liked the beginning a bit more than I liked the end. I think I liked, let's say, the first 30% of it the most, and then things got real weird real fast. I do find it interesting with books like Bunny that you can think a lot about what it meant. So there are different theories online that about what this book is really about. There are some really weird things that happen in this book that are not possible in real life, and it is very interesting to think what is real and what is not real, and if they're not real, then how come the character describes them as if they are real. And it's very interesting because the author doesn't give us one answer. It's not like, okay, this is what it is. It's not that simple. And so it is not my favorite read of the year by a long shot, but it was an interesting book to keep on thinking about after you read it. Then If We Were Villains. Okay, so I love this book. Did I love it this much? Or did I love it this much? Okay, I'll say a 6-star needs to be invented. I absolutely loved If We Were Villains. It had the dark academia vibes, which I love. I read it in the fall, which is the perfect time also for those dark academia vibes. I think it was comparable to The Secret History in some ways, but in my opinion, so much better in others, because it didn't have that dragging feeling in the end. I feel like there was more of a resolution in a way, where in The Secret History, the ending kind of... This is a risky thing to say, but I do feel like with The Secret History, you could kind of skip the last 2/3 and the plot doesn't really change all that much. With If We Were Villains, though, this is not the case at all. The plot keeps on moving. Also, If We Were Villains, it is more surrounding theater and Shakespeare specifically, which is something that I'm personally just more interested in than classical languages. And I used to do theater classes myself. I actually did theater at a theater called the Shakespeare Theater, so we only did Shakespeare plays, so that is why the Shakespeare references and stuff interested me specifically. It's not that I know every Shakespeare play, or I haven't even read the original Shakespeare plays, but I did read a lot of translations, and I did also play Lady Macbeth in Macbeth once, which is one of the Shakespeare plays that have a massive role in If We Were Villains. One thing that I found very, very interesting about this is that it has a parallel between the themes and the kind of roles in the Shakespeare plays, and then the themes and the roles in the book If We Were Villains. So you can kind of compare them. So you have the villains in the Shakespeare plays, which are obvious villains, and then you've got also the people in the theater academy that have to play those roles, but also sometimes act like the roles, and it kind of blurs the lines between acting a part and how you act in real life. So I thought that was super interesting as well. The Christmas Tree Farm, enjoyable, forgettable. It was good Christmas vibes. Romance books do tend to follow the same pattern, so it is very hard for me to put a romance book any higher than this tier, I would say, because it was a romance book that very much follows that same pattern that is in a lot of romance books. But it was, I would say, out of all the books that follow that pattern, this is one of the ones that I liked most. A Queen's Game by Catherine McGee. So this was her newest release at the time. It's actually still her newest release. The sequel to this is coming out in November, I believe, and I gave this 5 stars. I feel like everything Catherine McGee writes will just be one of my favorite things ever. This is a book that is, I would say it's kind of similar to her American Royal series, but this is based on a real life, some real life events that happened with, well, I don't remember, but it is based off the real lives of 3 princesses, I'm pretty sure, in England at some point in the past. So it has very similar vibes to American Royals, but American Royals is a imagined world in which America has a royal family, and this is about a real royal family and real royal drama that happened a long time ago, but it is fictionalized and things are tweaked and changed a little bit. A Court of Thorns and Roses. Well, the thing is that I have to now put this book, which is a part of a series, on one of its tiers, but I feel differently about the series as a whole than I do about this book specifically. I did not really love this book at all. I think I'm gonna put it in I don't regret reading it, but with the side note that I do recommend this series as a whole, especially if you're new to fantasy, coming from reading more romance books, then this is a good place to start. So I would recommend the series, and obviously to read the series you have to read the first book, but judging this book individually, I will say I'm gonna have to put it in I don't regret reading it, because I did not, regret reading it. It did entertain me, I would say, but there were some parts that I didn't like, some characters that I didn't like. The main character annoyed me a lot, but that gets better in the rest of the series. And then the final book is My December Darling, which is same as Night Shift, exactly what I had in mind when I made the category enjoyable but forgettable, because I genuinely do not remember anything about this book, but it was enjoyable and it gave me good Christmas vibes. So that was all of them. I think I talked for so long, but also it's so exciting and I love talking about books, and there are so many books in this list that I have either strong opinions about, in the sense that I love them so much, but I also have some unpopular opinions about them. I just have so much to say about a lot of these books, and I enjoy talking about books so much. So I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about these books. And with that, I think this video comes to an end. I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye!